Welcome to Season 5 of the VanRocha podcast, hosted by Gene Van Horn, a Gen X thinker with over 30 years of marketing and sales experience. Each episode, he sits down with innovative professionals who have that special spark, people who inspire us all to do more and be more. Today's guest, Myles Delfin, the founder of the Bike Scouts Project, will share with us his unique and strategic approach to disaster response in the islands of the Philippines.
I call it social teamwork, but it's basically bayanihan, the Filipino culture of people in their own communities helping each other with whatever that we can share with no expectation of return. The community is sort of like the central foundation for everything. When someone needs help, you don't even think about it. You don't think of yourself as a humanitarian or someone who's a savior or a hero. It's just instinct. You just do something.
In the age of the climate crisis, how has this community of 100,000 volunteers been able to create bottom-up technology innovations? They are saving lives through proactive disaster prep and disaster response equipment that doesn't even need to rely on electricity. Myles will tell us exactly how Bike Scouts have been doing it since 2013. Enjoy episode 3 of season 5 of the VanRocha podcast.
The thing about the Philippines is that it's very challenging. It's actually nearly impossible to find the right opportunities, especially for something like Bike Scouts, for a project like ours. So yeah, every chance I get to share what we do is something that I'm truly grateful for.
One of my team members said that you got to talk to Myles about his humility too, because he doesn't buy into the regular leadership concept. He has like a organization that's flat in a way that everyone has authority and responsibility. Can you break that down a little bit? That's what we found out.
One of the biggest influences on me when it comes to leadership is my experience as a team captain for adventure racing teams. In an adventure racing team, you have 4 people usually. So I was a team captain, we have a navigator, we have a logistics captain, and then someone who takes care of the entire team during the race. So they last for up to 7 days, nonstop racing. You do everything, hiking, running, cycling, caving, mountain climbing, everything. So you need to have people who are very good at what they do. And you have to trust that they will do their jobs as well as they can. And they will. Because that's really sort of like the nature of human beings, for us to do well, especially when we're with our friends or our family, with people that we care about. I found out, especially when I started working in the corporate world, I saw how micromanagement sort of breaks down people and sort of like stops them from performing at their best. And it defeats the purpose of having people around you who are good at what they do if they can't be good at what they do. The way I see it as a leader is really to just make sure that we're heading in the right direction. But the people around me, I know that they're good at what they do. And even if they fail sometimes, we're just human beings. So we move forward.
Yeah.
There was a time that I was dreaming of becoming a professional cyclist. So yeah, because I used to race mountain bikes. So I joined cross-country events and endurance events, like 24-hour races. I used to race a lot. And for a small period of time, I was sponsored by brands as well, like Adidas and Salomon. But again, coming from the Philippines, there's not a lot of opportunity to do that because we don't even have a program actually for kids who have talent in sports or cycling to progress and be able to join like junior races and neo pro and other levels of professional racing.
That's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because what I want to talk a lot about with regard to the Bike Scouts is opportunity. When I first heard your interview a couple of years ago, a lot of the United States was numb to things that happen outside. You know how it is. And now since that interview and knowing what you do, we've had similar disasters here that have brought it to our front door. And I think making it aware now is so timely because it's shocking to us, some of these inundations that just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I forgot how many years ago, but there was a big flooding that happened in Texas. And then it was followed, I think, by a blizzard where the power went out and everyone was really suffering while dealing with the cold because I think it was in the middle of winter. And I have a friend who lives in Texas, and he started a volunteer organization. He built a platform for it so that individual volunteers, people who just, wanted to help out, and even organizations could join in, kind of like social teamwork, like what we're doing. And we were having this very long conversation while he was building this volunteer network. At some point, I think he even asked for a copy of our manual, like our operations manual, because he was going to be presenting the concept to the state senate of Texas. I call it social teamwork, but it's basically bayanihan, the Filipino culture of people in their own communities helping each other with whatever that we can share with no expectation of return. People in other cultures, they find it hard to comprehend that there is a culture, and it's not just in the Philippines, where people have a sense of responsibility for others. It's not even because of good or bad or good and evil, but sort of like instinctive, because the culture is based on community. So community is sort of like the central foundation for everything. When someone needs help, you don't even think about it. You don't think of yourself as a humanitarian or someone who's a savior or a hero. It's just instinct. You just do something.
What do you think has made it so prevalent in the Philippines? Of course, it's centuries old, but how have you become like that as a people?
I think it's because of all of the challenges that Filipinos have experienced from the very beginning. Filipinos are a seafaring culture. We've always sort of like built boats and traveled to islands. I could imagine that it was super, super difficult for everyone to survive back then because they had to hunt, do everything so that they can survive and their families could survive. And the only way to do that was to come together as a community. The boats that ancient Filipinos built was called balangay. Balangay is another word that actually means community. So essentially, what they built the boat for is to house and move their community from one place to another. So from the very, very beginning, community is really sort of like the foundation for Filipino culture.
Okay, okay. And another thing, just to flesh it out some more, the Philippines is made up of, what is it, 1,000 islands?
It's actually
But
over 7,000 islands.
7,000. Now, I can't even understand that. I mean, it's like, what are we talking about as the average size of some of these islands? Could it be compared to like states in the United States, but separated by water, or counties separated by water?
Definitely, the Philippines as a country is smaller than even some states in the US, probably. The biggest island is called Luzon. So, this is the northernmost island if you look at a map. And then there's Mindanao in the south. In between, there are like many, many islands that I don't know how to sort of like describe the size of it. But for example, Cebu Island, if we did a ride around like a bicycle ride around the island, it would take us like 2 days.
That's a massive undertaking. So, I mean, you have 7,000 different possibilities of disaster on any given day.
Yes, exactly. And the Philippines, of course, sits on the Pacific Rim of Fire. We actually have a lot of volcanoes. We have like around 3 or 4 that are active right now. And then we have earthquakes. And then, of course, because of climate change, we have Category 5 typhoons, we have flooding. There's also a lot of like landslides that happen. That's the situation.
Okay, yeah, that's the situation, everybody who's listening. This is a massive undertaking. So, your organization, the Bike Scouts, founded through a Facebook post, my assistant told me. And now it's like huge, but it cost a lot of money to do what? What are you doing?
When I tell that story outside of the Philippines, it sounds amazing, it sounds special. But again, because of bayanihan culture in the Philippines, I feel that any Filipino could have done that, could have done the same and end up with an organization like Bike Scouts. Because when I posted on Facebook, just like a couple of sentences, I think, talking about how I used to ride bicycles and calling on all my friends who used to race bicycles as well. Why don't we take our bikes and use that to access people in communities that are isolated by Typhoon Yolanda back then when we started? So Category 5 Typhoon Haiyan, international name of the storm. I was talking about using our bicycles so we could access people who are isolated by the storm and help them communicate with their families and friends. Because again, in the Philippines, losing contact with your families and friends and people from your own neighborhood, for example, it's a very big deal because community is everything to us. Over the past 12 years, we've been trying to do that, being volunteer bicycle messengers for disaster response. And a lot of the cost that we have, of course, comes from doing that work because we work as volunteers. I've never paid myself a single cent for the past 12 years. But unfortunately, every time we need something, we have to pay for that. Every time we even get paperwork from the government, we still need to pay for that. So it's basically operational expenses. I get the feeling that a lot of people think of volunteer organizations or communities like the Bike Scouts that we just basically do things, make things happen without really the need for money. But unfortunately, the world runs on money. So whenever we need something, we have to pay for that. And it's not because the people who we have to pay are less generous. They need to support their own families. And so that's just the way things work. And yeah, basically
Yeah.
our biggest has been operational expenses.
Yeah. And, that's something that I really want to make known to people too, because from what I've understood communicating with you in the past, you guys can really stretch a dollar, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Not because not because it's a talent, but because we have no choice. And that's actually been a challenge for us that we're able to do that. Because when I started talking to potential funders, they couldn't believe that we were asking for so little money because they're so used to organizations or projects asking them for maybe, I don't know, millions of dollars or something to do stuff. But the thing is, here in the Philippines, everything is way cheaper. And because we're a community, we're able to find better ways of doing things. Like if we have a community member who has a truck, for example, so that means we don't really need to rent a truck. We just need to pay for the gasoline, probably for the fuel. So stuff like that. We're able to find things in our own community through bayanihan, again, social teamwork. And a good example of that, of course, is the technology that we're building right now. We have zero funders. We don't have investors. It's just basically people in the community contributing their talent, contributing their time. So we're able to build these things. Our app now is called Super Scout, just to differentiate it from the community, because the community is, of course, is a nonprofit, but the technology needs to be a for-profit for it to survive. Because again, everything costs money. The app that we have started out and still is an app for disaster monitoring. This is a way for people to help monitor and report disasters as they happen in their own neighborhood. Batanes Island, which is the extreme north of the Philippines, and it's so isolated that it's closer to Taiwan rather than the Philippines. When an earthquake happened, everyone in the country knew that there was an earthquake because they were listening to the news, they were watching the news online. But we were watching live video of a mountainside collapsing and destroying the water pipes that provided water for the community in the Batanes Islands. So that's sort of like the kind of thing that, because of experience or our experience over the past 12 years of how disasters unfold, we realized that people needed real-time information so that they would know. Because again, the Philippines is not like, for example, the US, where we don't have a FEMA. We can't just send helicopters and trucks and stuff where disasters happen. We have to be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more strategic with the few resources that we have. If there's no real-time information coming from people who are actually there, what happens is that even government will end up wasting a lot of resources. NGOs will waste a lot of resources. And that's one of the main things that we're sort of like trying to solve: the efficiency of response, the efficiency of resilience. The second thing that the app does is that it serves as a platform for social teamwork, for bayanihan, basically. Because bayanihan is a culture. Bayanihan is instinctive to us. But I realized that without a platform, without technology behind it, it might struggle to sort of like provide value for people in this age of AI and everything else. As far as I know, it's the first platform specifically designed for bayanihan to happen, for people to participate in social teamwork. We've also built our own mesh network. It's at a prototype stage, but it will provide resilient connectivity for people so that even if the mobile service or internet service goes down, there will still be a way for people to at least message each other for disaster reports. We've also built our own solar energy kits. So right now they're suitcase sized, but they can power your laptop, your computer, your refrigerator, your electric fan. It's a small package that can power a lot of things. And right now, we sent a prototype to, again, the island of Batanes because of Typhoon Ragasa, which is category 5 again, and they lost power. Our team there has their own Starlink connection, but Just like with a lot of other technology, when the power grid goes down, nothing actually works. Oh, and last thing, I also want to promote our new team in actually based in UC Berkeley. So they're students, they're actually professional engineers, but they're also students at the same time. Hopefully, we'll end up with our own modular, low cost environmental sensor network because all of the early warning notifications that people get come from somewhere far away. So what happens is that people get information about disasters as they happen, but it's too generalized. So, for example, a warning will say that there will be heavy rain or strong winds, but that doesn't apply to every location. But with our own environmental sensor network system, people will receive through our app like very local information about disasters as they unfold.
That's incredible. I mean, all these things that you guys are accomplishing. I want to talk a little bit about that solar kit. I mean, you guys just made this thing?
Yes, one of our community members is actually an engineer. So he used to work with the government. He won a 3D printer in a competition. So it's not even a high-end 3D printer. It's one of the things like maybe families would buy and use for fun. But basically, he used that to print the components for our very first prototype for the solar kit. And from there, basically just improved and improved and improved the technology. And that's how we ended up with our own solar energy suitcase, basically. In Philippine pesos, it's like 45,000. But I can imagine that in US dollars, it's so much cheaper. I think less than $1,000.
What are the connections like? I'm just thinking outside the box. Like, how many power connections does it have?
Well, for me, being a non-engineer, it looks very complex. I know how to assemble it because the person who created it explained to us how to maintain it. And that's the other thing about all of the technology that we're building is that it has an education component, actually. Everything that we build, we want to give away. The solar energy kit, mesh network devices, and even the environmental sensor network. We're going to be teaching even school kids how to build components for that so they can build it themselves and have it in their own communities because it's the fastest way to scale. Unlike other products, we're not after a market. We're not after selling stuff. We're after expanding and scaling the technology so that it can actually provide actual value for people in the line of danger because of climate-driven disasters.
Interesting. And you referenced a few minutes ago Starlink, which I believe is the Elon Musk developed satellite internet provider, correct?
Yes, space-based internet.
Right. So like when power goes out, are you able to use the solar kit to connect to Starlink? Because you mentioned data maybe not being available on the app, the Super Scout app, but you could do messages sometimes. Can you kind of break that down so we can understand a little bit what happens?
One of the main reasons why we decided to build our own mesh network is because we realized that even with space-based internet, even with the best technology that we have available right now on the planet, clouds will actually stop Starlink from being effective. They lose signal because of clouds or bad weather. Disaster events are fast-evolving things. People can't wait for the clouds to clear so that they can send like a message asking for help. Messages need to be sent immediately. So that's why we built our own mesh network. We built the solar energy kit because the power grid in the Philippines, all it takes is a little bit of rain for it to fail. Mobile service, basically their antennas are basically getting power from the energy grid as well. The solar energy kit not only powers connectivity for people that are affected by disasters, but it also provides them with a way to power water pumps, for example, so that they would have safe drinking water as well.
Interesting. My goodness, that is incredible. So like you've laid the groundwork for pretty much what the theme of our conversation is. It's like this bottom up supportive organization instead of waiting for the top down to rescue you guys, and I was thinking about you because when Jamaica recently had their Category 5 storm, it played out just like you said. People lost connectivity. And when the reporters went in and made access, people wanted to let others know that they were alive. That was the priority, to just let people know, hey, I'm still alive. Relatives in other countries and things like that. And I said, look at this. This is playing out exactly like the Bike Scouts said.
That's exactly what happens in the aftermath of a disaster. It was the same experience when two typhoons, like powerful typhoons, affected Puerto Rico. So people were still in their communities, but there was no access because roads were blocked or bridges were destroyed. So that's exactly the problem, because people are always thinking about sort of like large scale response. But people, especially if you have a family, for example, if you have kids, if you have elderly, if you have people that are sick in your family, you can't wait for large scale response. What you need
Hmm.
is the most essential things. Children especially need food immediately. They can't wait for 72 hours for a helicopter to arrive and drop off random supplies for your family. They need it immediately. In the next 2 hours, they will probably need that. The only way to make that happen is if you have resilient mobility, and which for us right now is basically one of the oldest technologies that we have available, which is the bicycle. And so we pair the bicycle with the technology that we've built. And through that, like for example, the mesh network. So it will operate no matter what happens. And if you pair that with the bicycle, you have a system, you have a community based system for delivery, for finding out where help is needed. It's the size of a mobile device, the one that we've built, because we're not able to miniaturize it so much because we need more resources to do that. But eventually, we hope to shrink it down to such a point that you can put it in your pocket and you won't even know it's there. So it's basically radio devices peer to peer. They communicate by sending data as a radio signal. And you can do messaging right now, but we're hoping that we can implement some level of Wi Fi so that you can send at least a photo, for example. Because it's waterproof, we've designed it to be waterproof. You can just throw it anywhere and it will still work. And if you have enough of this throughout one area, they will continue to provide like a way for people to send messages to each other throughout their own community or throughout their own province, or even eventually in the far future, maybe throughout the country.
Now I'm starting to turn into a business person here. What is preventing you guys from selling this technology and then continuing to grow it and, like you said, develop it? Can you tell me?
We already have clients for a product like the Mesh Network. We've had several inquiries from actually offers from companies, large companies that want to sort of like either sponsor it or buy it for their own operations. But the
Right.
problem that the Bikes House has is that we don't have capital. Even though we have a startup mindset, we're not considered a startup by investors. And we probably won't be accepting VC money because of the way that they want things to be implemented. If you're receiving VC money, it's not going to work because of our social benefit component, which we want to really prioritize. For now, we're building with whatever money that we have, which means we're spending our own grocery money, we're spending our own rent money to pay for everything, little by little. But if we get lucky and we find maybe a grant, or maybe, I don't know if angel investor is the right person that we need to approach, but if someone would be willing to come in and invest for the long term and be patient about it. I come from an advertising background, so which explains why I still have connections with corporations and brands. I'm able to talk to advertising agencies, for example, who connects me with their own clients. So for me, at least as an advertising slash sales and marketing person, it's actually very easy for me to pitch this to clients. They know me from my work before as a creative director as well. Even CEOs are willing to sit down and have coffee and listen to what I have to pitch them. And the thing that's really stopping us is basically capital. If we can't come up with the product itself at scale, then clients don't have anything that they can pay for. So yeah, essentially capital so that we can produce the products.
So those radios, those gadgets, like you said, the size of a cell phone. You talked about the solar powered suitcase being about $1,000 to produce through the printing mechanism. So how much does it cost to make one of these devices? Or I would say two at least, because you need at least two to make a basic network.
Okay, let me convert to US dollar. Um, Probably, I hope I'm correct. Probably $10.
I'm gonna just even go and say $20. So it's like basically if an organization paid $2,000, I mean, they could basically get like 100 of these things from you guys. What is wrong with these corporations? It's just like that's a steal. There was someone on LinkedIn who I follow. When the North Carolina disaster happened, I think last year, he couldn't get in touch with his grandmother for the longest time. He had a big truck. So eventually, after a few major Herculean efforts, he found her. But if she would have had one of these $10 things, you
Yes,
know,
exactly. And by the way, the mesh network is not a new idea. It's even used by the U.S. military. So it's
Mhm.
technology that exists. It's just that it's a technology that people usually can't afford. People from the Philippines, for example, can't afford even just $10. And there have been a lot of companies that created products similar to what we have right now, but all of them have been selling it at a price that nobody can afford it. From our experience, for a product like the mesh network to succeed, you need a grid to have it in existence in the real world so that
Right.
people can actually use it. So we figured that we don't actually need to sell it right away to end users, ordinary people. When companies pay for it, we can basically create that grid and people can
Right.
just basically use the same grid. It's not a burden on the system anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like my thing is I'm thinking about, okay, all this to help the Filipino people because, if you sell it at cost times whatever markup, then those profits just flow in because, like you said, $10 is a lot of money for certain people, even here in the United States, in some areas. That is so cost effective for what it does. The recent disasters in Texas and North Carolina, these other places, that device would have made such a big difference.
absolutely. I mean, for example, the US, you have a lot of cars. Try to
Right.
imagine if every car has a mesh network device. So they're driving around, they're basically sending out signals, messages coming from people from around them. And when we tested our own device with line of sight, the range per node is 300 kilometers. So, of course,
Mm.
it requires line of sight. And if there's a building in between two nodes, it would block the signal. But then there would be a way around it if we have enough devices in certain areas.
These are things that I wanted to ask you about that you're helping illuminate the community on because you all have built it yourself. And you know how it is, Myles, you probably grasp this even more than I do. When a person or organization's back is against the wall, they figure out how to do stuff.
Everyone talks about AI, everyone talks about technology. But the reality is that outside of certain wealthy circles, nobody can actually afford to participate in any of this technology. And so
Hmm.
I'm hoping long term, and this is me just imagining things like fantastic things in the future, that if we can scale Bike Scouts to maybe a global level at some point, there would be enough people with enough talent and enough resources that we can actually build every single technology that exists in the world today and give that to each other, give that to people so that we can participate in innovation, so that we can actually participate in progress. I would go back all the way to 2013 when I was with one of the Bike Scouts teams that was responding to Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda, which was Category 5, destroyed entire provinces here in the Philippines, caused tens of thousands of people to lose their lives. A lot more were missing long after the storm. So we were in a place called Tanawan. So Tanawan is a small municipality, it's a small town. And in this area, almost all of the coastal villages were swept away into the sea by multiple storm surge waves. So the storm surge waves, it was as high as a 2 or 3 story house or building. So a lot of people actually lost their lives in that area. And in one evacuation center, I found one man who was sitting alone in one corner. I found out that he wasn't actually from Tanawan. He was just there as a construction worker. So he didn't actually know anyone. So I approached him and asked him, is there anything that we can do to help you? And he said, can you help me send a message to my sister and her family because they don't know that I'm still alive? He said that he was sure that they were worried. And I said, sure, we can do that for you. And just for context, we were able to send messages, even though there was no electricity, no internet, and no mobile service on the ground, because we worked with a media company called Rappler, owned by Maria Ressa, who is a Nobel Prize winner. And then they allowed us to use their satellite IP van, which is basically the van that they use to broadcast their live reporting. And they helped us convert their TV white space signal into data signal so that we could connect to the internet and make telephone calls. And so this man wrote his note on a piece of paper and he said, okay, I'll contact your sister. And later on that day, when I got back to our camp, I called up his sister. I told her that I'm calling for your brother. He wants us to send you a message. And the message was that, sister, please don't worry anymore. I'm still alive. That was all that he said. When his sister heard that, I think she dropped the phone. I could hear them in the background. They were laughing and they were crying. And they completely forgot that I was on the line with them. And so after a few minutes, I decided to end the call because I knew then that the Bike Scouts had already done its job.
Man, that's a mic drop right there, Myles. That's basically your purpose. We're going to take this message to the people. You've already done the hardest part. I commend you because it's just Herculean what you have done. And, I love this kind of thing because there's just a win for everyone.
it's not really me. Again, I'm the founder. I'm the one telling all of these stories about the Bike Scouts. But the actual work is being done by the 100,000 or more Bike Scouts in the Philippines. That even now, there are Bike Scouts that are deployed in northern Cebu, helping out their own communities because of the multiple earthquakes, because of the typhoon, because of the severe flooding that affected even our own teams. Whenever I tell this story, it's because they don't have a platform. They're not heard by a lot of people. So I do that work for them. But really, I really want to highlight that 99.9% of the work, 99.9% of the credit goes to the members of the community. I'm just here to tell their story.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with your friends. We'll be back next month with another great conversation with the CEO of Shopify app developer XCO Agency, Mohammed El Gorfi from Morocco. Follow Myles on LinkedIn and use the URL on screen to learn more about the Bike Scouts' work. Clickable links in the description. See you next time.